Hello you guys, and welcome back to my channel. We are doing another podcast episode, and yet again I'm in a different location. I don't know when I'm gonna have a consistent location. I'm kind of just all over the place with life right now, and I promise I will do an update video. That actually is going to be the next video that I film, is an update, tell you guys what has been going on and what I was supposed to be doing next year. Is it happening? Not next year, in a couple of months for the following school year. But we're in a different location, we're in a different place, but you know, that's okay, we're still podcasting. So as always, make sure to follow the podcast. I will link everything in the description below. There's an Instagram for the podcast. Also make sure you're following me on my personal Instagram and TikTok because that's where I post the most. And yeah, if you guys like the podcast, make sure to rate it. And also in this video, leave some comments on what you guys want to hear in future episodes. I would love to know that. But let's just go ahead and get straight into the podcast episode. Hello you guys, and welcome back to the Teaching in Your 20s podcast. I am your host, Christina Himmelho, and in today's episode, we are kickstarting the Calm Classroom series. I'm going to be doing a series of 5 episodes focused on getting back into the classroom with a calm mindset. I want to help take away the stress and the overwhelming anxiety that builds up going into the school year. If you have already started the school year, this is stuff that you can implement now. If you have not started the school year yet, you can use these tips to kind of just help you get in the right mindset going back into the classroom and just mitigate some of that anxiety and stressful thoughts that I know we all have going back into the classroom. The goal of this podcast episode is to help reframe the mindset of having anxiety going into the classroom. So whether you are a first-year teacher and this is your first time ever having your classroom on your own, or you're just any teacher really who feels stress and anxiety going back into a new school year, this podcast episode is for you. Speaking from my personal experience, I know that anytime I have started a school year, and I have restarted at new schools every year that I have taught, I've always felt so much pressure. And I don't know if it was just pressure that I have put on myself or just the overwhelming sensation of everything that needs to get done before even just the first day of school, but I found myself being stressed by things like having the most perfect classroom, looking at new curriculum, and trying to digest all of the resources that are offered to us as teachers, and just the sheer responsibility of being in charge of 20 plus students' lives. It's a lot of pressure. It can be really easy to compare yourself as a new teacher to veteran teachers or teachers who have been teaching for 5-6 years already because you are surrounded by them. So you see all the things that they are doing and they might seem like they're not as stressed, which I'm sure they still are stressed. But you know, this just comes with being a new teacher, being new to the game, feeling like an amateur and feeling like you're not prepared. And I think that at the beginning of the school year, you can have a lot of negative self-talk, whether or not you're trying to. Let's just reframe the negative self-talk and get into a headspace where we feel like we are prepared and ready to take on the challenges of the new school year. I want to just first start off by talking about how normal it is to be stressed going into a new school year. Even if you've taught the same grade level, I think that it is so important for us to acknowledge as teachers that we do feel super stressed going into a new school year and that it's a universal experience. I know I don't speak for everybody, but most of the teachers I've talked to do feel some sort of anxious thoughts or some sort of stress going into the new school year. And it has a lot to do with just, I use the word overwhelming a lot. I'm going to have to think of other words for overwhelming on this podcast because I just feel like I say that a lot. But really, there's so much to get done and there is a lot of unknown. Each school year comes with new challenges, new students that you're working with, frequent curriculum changes, changes to admin, changes to staff at your school, and that is a lot to handle as a new teacher or any teacher. Anybody would be stressed by all of these things, so I just want to start off by normalizing your stress because I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast episode, it's because you are feeling some sort of stress going into the school year, and I just want to say that it is so normal and do not be hard on yourself for feeling stressed. That is not going to help the situation at all. Just accept that you're feeling stressed and focus on how can I make myself feel better. So I want to kind of just talk through those triggers for teachers that make us feel so stressed at the beginning of the year, because I think it's really important to name the things that are causing us the anxiety, and then we can get into how to switch that mind frame into a more positive light and in a way that you feel like you can overcome the challenge. When we're talking about why this time of year feels so overwhelming, I think one of the first things I think of are expectations. And these can be expectations set by your school that you're teaching at, your admin, or even just yourself. And I find for me that it's always high expectations that I've set for myself that I'm not necessarily feeling pressure from other people. It's a pressure that I have put on myself because I hold myself to a high standard, as I'm sure all of you do, because we feel that pressure to make sure that we are the best teachers for our students and that we can give them the best learning environment, the best resources for just helping them to be successful. That is the core of our job and the core of why we want to be teachers. And so it makes sense that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect and to have it all figured out. The pressure and the overwhelm that I'm talking about can come from the curriculum. I remember when I switched from kindergarten to fourth grade, and I did a whole podcast episode on this, that the demands from the curriculum were super overwhelming and the expectations felt very high of needing to move students from 2 grade levels below to on grade level or above grade level. And it felt almost impossible for me and was a very overwhelming, stressful thing that I felt at the beginning of the school year. And so that's something that you might be feeling, that, okay, how am I going to get a grasp on this curriculum when I have not had enough time to study it? And how am I going to get these kids to where they need to be if they come in at a lower grade level, if they're behind grade level? And that really ties in with how unknown the beginning of the school year is, because you don't know your students yet. You don't know what you're being handed for your year of teaching. Another thing that goes along with the curriculum is that there are so many resources, and as amazing as that is, I will never be ungrateful for that, but it can cause stress because it takes so much time to kind of go through all of those resources and figure out what you're using for your classroom. So it's like there's almost too much that it's so hard to choose from, and especially as a first year teacher, it can, like I said, it can just be really hard to know, okay, what's going to be best for my students? What am I going to like using? And that can cause that feeling of stress going into the school year. Differentiating instruction is also something that always caused me stress as a teacher. And I know when I went into my first year, I feel like I had zero thoughts about this, in the sense of I don't know how to actually differentiate instruction. Even though I have been through all my teacher prep courses, I don't really know how to do it because I've never done it before. And that is something that came over time for me. But at the beginning of the school year, I definitely was stressed about this, especially with the unknown of, okay, I don't know what students I'm having. How much am I going to have to differentiate my lessons? How many groups am I going to have to pull? How often am I going to have to pull those groups? All of those things can be running through your mind and causing you to feel stressed. The next big category I want to talk about with back to school stress is pressure from admin. Now, this is something that I think is a touchy subject to talk on, because our admin is obviously there to help us, and they are our biggest supporters, and I have had great experience with admin, but there is always pressure from admin. I mean, it's your boss. You're wanting to perform well. You know that you're going to have observations throughout the school year. They might be talking about where they want the students to be this year. I know at the beginning of the year meetings, usually they're talking about, okay, this was our data from last year. Let's push these kids up. And in just saying that, you know that there's an expectation to move student scores, move students up grade levels, and it just causes anxiety. I know that admin doesn't necessarily want that, but in the end, it just does. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, of course, I'm going to be stressed if my boss is walking through my classroom, watching how I'm teaching, and basically evaluating how well I'm doing. That is always going to cause stress, and it's not something unique to teaching, but it definitely is something worth mentioning. And just, again, I really just want to normalize it, that it is a feeling that I think a lot of teachers have, even teachers who have taught for a while. The last category of stressors that I want to bring up is comparison. I think this is probably just the hardest thing in life in general. And so obviously this is something that translates into the classroom. And I know I've touched on this before, but when I say comparison, I'm talking about, especially with your grade level team, they are there to support you and they will be your biggest supporters. But it also is just so hard, especially as a new teacher, not to compare yourself to the lessons that they are teaching, how their classrooms look, how they interact with students, even how they interact with parents. They are so much more experienced than the new teachers, and it's really a time where I found that I had to consciously remind myself and tell myself, you are a new teacher, you are not expected to be at that level that they are. They have been doing this for so much longer. It is okay. But comparing yourself to other teachers or to even other teachers like on social media who look like they have everything together, I promise you they also have really hard days as well. But comparing yourself to them is just going to drain you and take away the energy and the positivity that you need in order to be successful. Now comes the reframing part, and I think it's really important that we already went through and acknowledged and allowed ourselves to feel those feelings of stress and anxiety. And I talked through things that caused me stress and anxiety and things that I think that a lot of teachers feel, because it is so important to allow yourself to feel it. I am never ever saying in my podcast, and never want to get the message across, to just ignore how you're feeling and just power through. I want to encourage you to sit with your feelings and acknowledge them, and don't be mad at yourself. That's something that just in general in life that I struggle with, not being mad at myself for things. So I never want to get that message across. I just want to give us an opportunity to reframe it. After we have already acknowledged it, okay, how are we going to reframe this into a more positive light and help ourselves to just feel a little bit lighter? Because I think when we focus so much on the negative or on the stress and on the anxiety, we feel very heavy. And when you allow yourself to try to think of it in a positive light, it just gives you the space and the mental clarity, I guess, to just feel a pressure and a weight lifted off of yourself. And the mind is a very powerful thing. So let's get into how I would be reframing this and how I've tried to reframe this in the past. Let's say we're thinking of the back to school season and we're thinking very negative, and we're in a mind space where we're like, oh my gosh, what if this happens like last year when I was teaching? Or, oh my gosh, I'm a first year teacher. I'm never going to be able to do this. How am I going to get through this? I feel like there's this huge mountain to climb when it comes to preparing my classroom. And what if we just change that into a mentality where it becomes more of, wow, I have so much to learn and I'm so excited to see what this year has in store for me. And I know that I am capable and I will be able to overcome the challenges that this year is going to bring me. Back to school season is so fun and can be so exciting. And I think it's totally okay for the excitement and the anxiety to coexist and for you to be experiencing those things together. I don't ever think that it's like I feel excited or I feel anxiety. And, you know, if my sister's listening to this, she's actually the one that taught me this. She is currently doing her PhD in clinical psychology, and I am going to get her on the podcast to talk about, managing student behaviors, because she has helped me so much every single year as a teacher. But anyways, I'm using one of her psychology terms. We're not going to say or, we're always going to say and. And this used to annoy me so much. I really hope she listens to this, because I used to get so annoyed when she would tell me, Christina, it's not or, it's and. But I really think that this is so helpful in reframing and just reframing the way you think about things. And you can even take this and apply this to other things in life and not just teaching. So the anxiety and the excitement are coexisting together. Emphasis on the and. You know, the anxiety is probably telling you, I have no idea what's coming up. I'm so scared. And the excitement is on this side telling you, okay, I have no idea what's coming, but I'm so excited. I'm so excited to meet my students. I'm so excited to meet my coworkers. I'm so excited to set up my classroom, and just allow both of those things to coexist together. Everything is going to fall into place one step at a time. I think just when we look at the big picture of an entire school year, it becomes so daunting. So breaking it down into one day at a time, one check off your to-do list at a time, and just remembering that, especially teaching in your 20s, yes, I'm throwing in the title of the podcast, but especially teaching in your 20s is just a time to figure it out and to try your best. All right, so now I'm going to get into some quick mindset reminders. If you even want to write these down, this would be a great time to like pause and take out pencil, paper, your notes app, something so that you can look back on these when you're feeling overwhelmed to switch your mindset into a more positive light. The negative thought is there's so much to do. How am I going to get it all done? The positive is not everything needs to be done at once. Just do one thing at a time. It's okay to ask for help or do things the simple way. This pressure is temporary. Once routines are set in place, it will be so much easier. The next negative thought is, I do not have enough experience to be teaching a whole entire classroom of students. We're going to flip that into every amazing teacher had a first year, and this is mine. Experience comes from doing, and I am gaining it every single day. I may be new, but I am bringing fresh energy, new and creative ideas. I am not expected to know it all. I am here to learn and grow on my own teaching journey. I belong here, even if I'm still growing into the role. The next negative thought is, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing right now. And so now let's flip this one into some positives. Feeling unsure is part of learning. It means I'm growing. The most important thing I can do is care, and I already do. Confidence doesn't come first, action does. I can feel uncertain and still do a good job. The final negative thought has to do with comparison, and it is, that teacher is doing blank. Should I be doing that? Am I behind? The positives for this one are, I am not behind. I'm on my own path, not theirs. Their success does not mean that I am failing. My students need me, not a version of somebody else. I can be inspired by others without comparing myself to them. I really do think that it is so important to be changing your mindset. Even by listening to this podcast, you are already taking that step to try to improve the experience that you're having going into your first year of teaching and going into a brand new school year. The mind is such a powerful thing, and I really encourage you to write down these little messages to yourself, maybe even have them on the background of your phone, put them somewhere in your classroom while you're doing your classroom setup, just to see them and continuously remind yourself that you are capable and that you will get through this. I hope that you guys have been able to gain something from this podcast, even if it was just that you feel heard. That is incredible, and that is my purpose. I want to make you guys feel like there is somebody who understands what you are going through and who can normalize the experience for you and give you some tips from their own experience, and that's exactly what I am trying to do, and that is my purpose with the whole podcast. And I just know how difficult teaching is, and if I can help even a couple of people, that would be incredible. Thank you guys so much if you have listened through this entire podcast episode. Do not forget to follow the podcast on all the socials, and make sure to rate the podcast and leave a comment letting me know which one of the mindset switches you liked the best, which little quote you think you are going to take with you into your first year of teaching. I would love to know that and hear from you guys what is really resonating with you. You always are welcome to put in the comments what you want to hear from the podcast. As I said, this was the first episode of the Calm Classroom series. I'm super excited to get it kickstarted with this episode about the mindset switch. That is all I have for today's podcast episode. I will talk to you guys in the next episode of Teaching in Your 20s.